Summer is really almost over, John, and that means it's basically like harvest time right now. And that means we're coming up on another anniversary of the Las Vegas shooting. How you doing tonight, John?
I'm doing all right, Jason. Good to see you again. You look younger and younger. I don't know what the hell you're doing, but it's working. So keep doing it.
No
Whatever you're
booze,
doing.
and I try to get a bit
Yeah.
of sun every day and not eat a lot of junk food. I do like ice cream, I must admit, but I try to
Just
eat
be
organic
careful though.
ice cream.
Be careful. If you list too many things and it's not consistent with the CDC's
Oh,
recommendation, the show will
yeah,
get canceled. So,
it's
if you have
true.
ice cream and sun in the same, yeah,
Can't,
I don't think that,
not
yeah,
allowed.
I don't think that's consistent with what we're hearing out of the CDC right now. So let's be careful. But you
Yeah,
look
and
great, and
thank
and
you.
we know it's better to look good than to feel good. So
You look
congratulations,
marvelous. But it's
indeed.
also important that we mention, I mean, you're joking, of course, but it's not a joke because there's been so many times, I was going through some of our older material and I went back, back in the day, Crowdsource the Truth 2, which was a backup channel, had 28,500 subscribers, and the main channel had 120,000 subscribers, and a lot of people could see our videos. But there are malicious social engineers. And when I say that, it takes the edge off of what these people are actually trying to do, John. I think now that we've got the perspective of seeing what the Disinformation Governance Board was all about, and they've got laws they're trying to bring in now, these are people that have been working to destroy the Constitution, our access to the First Amendment, our viewers' ability to decide what they want to hear and listen to. And it's really just horrendous un-American stuff. So I want to thank all the people who have been sponsoring us. And everybody knows that they can watch our sponsor exclusive shows on Friday nights. People can join us on subscribestar.com/I am John Cullen and patreon.com/I am John Cullen. I want to thank Crowdsource the Truth viewers who have gone over there to Subscribestar and Patreon/I am John Cullen and support John. I've been trying to create an ecosystem here to help everybody be able to keep their shows going. And I certainly couldn't do it without the viewer sponsors. So thanks to everybody. They can also join us on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. And I want to give a shout out to Subscribestar, super great with the tech support. I really appreciate and respect their CEO. He is a staunch supporter of the First Amendment, and he does not cower to these social engineering losers. So thank you to everybody who is sponsoring on Subscribestar. What are we going to get into tonight, John?
Well, we've got sort of this confluence of current events and the Las Vegas shooting. And the confluence is what we have on the first slide in my deck, sort of sets up the whole show and what we're going to be talking about, because this is what's been happening. So for those of you who are following me on Twitter, thank you. For those who aren't, it's a lot of fun to watch me get down in the mud with Marion Koopmans and Martin Kulldorff and some of the greatest virologists and epidemiologists in the world. It's kind of fun. So check it out, even if you just want to watch. But if you go over to the next slide, go to the first slide. This is sort of the setup for tonight's show, because the Senate is subpoenaing the Saudis' sovereign wealth fund
That's
over
crazy.
what they're right. So our Senate is saying to the Saudis, we're subpoenaing you.
That's
Okay. Now keep
nuts.
in mind, well, remember how much stuff we sold them when Trump was in office? Dude, they were buying more military stuff than Russia. Like, they were outspending everybody. It was
Hmm.
crazy. So we were just doing deals and selling them this and selling them that. And that's part of what we're going to look at tonight. One of the things that we've been doing with our patrons over the last couple weeks, the last 2 weeks, is we've been looking at some of the classic footage from the Las Vegas shooting, the stuff that I published years and years ago. And you and I have been going through it. I don't know, what do they call that? Director's commentary,
Yeah.
the guys who made the movie sit there and watch the movie with the audience and kind of tell everybody what was going on. So you and I have been doing that with the audience the last couple of weeks. And tonight we're going to be looking at that first Frank Muth film the one that got you to
That's
reach out to me with the email and invite me on the show. We're going to look at that because that's sort of the anchoring evidence that, wait a second, how the hell did this guy go from there was a shooting in Las Vegas to the Saudis? Whoa, where's the connective tissue here? And this was the thing that you picked up on, was this video. And the video gets into this thing called OPM Sang and how sophisticated this operation is and all that. So we're going to take a look at that video with our patrons tonight. And then the other video that we're going to take a look at with the patrons, which is a real classic video, was, and you'll appreciate this, this was video number 33. And video number 33 was the one in November where I put forward the most comprehensive. At the time, it was a hypothesis, and now over the course of 6 years, it's become a thesis. Yeah. And so I put this forward. It was November of 2017, I think November 25th. So 3 weeks after the Night of the Long Sword, I published the thesis. And we're going to take a look at that tonight with the patrons, and we're going to do that together and kind of break it down on who the characters are. And the reason that this is important is because our foreign policy right now, so, you know, the story we just looked at, the Saudis are being subpoenaed by the Senate. But if you go to the second slide of my deck, again, the foreign policy is being shaped by a bunch of lies. In other words, sort of this narrative that's not really what happened.
Oh, and so who wrote it?
Yeah, well, that's why I pulled this in there, of course. So this is Bruce Rydell of Brookings.
Right, let's tell everybody who this is. This is...
All right, well, hang on. And look at who he's pandering to. So Bruce Rydell, former CIA at Brookings, right? Which, you know, some people say Brookings is like the CIA retirement club,
right? And
you know, it's where you know, retired CIA people go to keep doing what they've been doing, just with a different name on the building. And this article is about Mohammed bin Nayef. Oh, he's been arrested. He's in prison.
Too bad Bruce Rydell isn't.
So we're going to take a look at, did these guys bet on the wrong horses? Yes. And, you know, does the Biden administration understand that? Do they know what actually happened? Or I don't know. In other words, you've got the House Intelligence Committee, right? How much were they told? I don't know. Did they have a briefing in a skiff and say, all right, listen, guys, we're going to tell you what happened here, but this is hush, hush. This can't leave this room. Is there a small group that knows? I think there has to be. And the reason is, when we publish stuff on Twitter, everybody ignores it. Congressmen, senators ignore it, as if they know and they're not allowed to talk about it. So we're going to dig into this a little deeper tonight.
And I got a question for you, John. I don't know, you know, I know sometimes you're on a tight, hard out at the end of the sponsor exclusive show on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and all the others. But I've prepared some information tonight as a bit of a surprise to you that I think will answer some of the questions, but it's important that we get through your material first. When people join us on the sponsor exclusive segment, Subscribestar and Patreon /crowdsourcethetruth or Odyssey or Substack or any of the John Cullen channels, I am going to reveal, even if we only have a minute to do it, I can do a quick version, but at the end of everything you give us tonight, I have some new information that I discovered in the course of, you know, you and I had a pretty lengthy conversation this morning about the Saudi Sovereign Wealth Fund, and I shared with you some information that Charles had shared with me. And after you and I got off the phone, I had pretty close to a 2-hour conversation with Charles and went really in depth. So when you just brought up this Guardian article here talking about the Senate is going to subpoena the sovereign wealth fund, it's important that we remind people that it was a lawsuit in 2022 that resulted in the decision that you could even sue Saudi Arabia. So this is new, kind of uncharted waters. We got a lot of stuff to share with people.
And you know what's funny? What's hysterical to me about this is how they talk about the frickin' golf thing. In other words, the Senate is getting in the midst of this PGA LIV golf, and you got Dick Blumenthal. And in other words, I'm looking at all these senators and I'm thinking, how many of them know what really happened? And if they knew that, would they be going through all this or not? And so I'm kind of dumbfounded, because I think we're kind of watching all this foreign policy related activity going on that's based on a false narrative. It seems like a waste of time, waste of money, waste of a lot of stuff. So that's what I want to take a closer look at, but I've got a couple things to share before we go to the picture.
And let's just also talk about this for a second, because what you've done, John, is everybody basically knows there was a shooting in Las Vegas, people were killed, people were injured. What you have done is you have cut through that text and gotten to a subtext that most people are unaware of, the involvement of Saudi Arabia and all of these guys, and everything that you've shared with us over the years makes just so much sense in terms of fitting in with the timeline of the Night of the Long Swords, Al-Walid getting locked up, making that secret deal. I believe I've discovered yet another layer below the subtext that will answer some of those questions, but let's carry on with what you've got here.
All right, cool. Well, last week's show, just as we were wrapping up, like in the final minute or two, we were talking about this aspect of the FBI. And so it's sort of like three legs of the same stool. So one big aspect of it is, for me, this was the event where the FBI just completely jumped the shark, lost all credibility. They came out with a 2.5-page report and said, yeah, we've been doing this for a year and a half. Here's our 2.5-page report, and we can't figure out what the motive was. And that was it. And then sometime in the last year or so, they released more stuff having to do with the ballistic testing, because all my stuff said there was no link between the guns in the room and the victims. Finally, 5 years later, they released something that's obviously fake.
Yeah, no way you could doctor a report in 5 years' time.
And what I said was, give me access to the database, because the scanning technology that we've looked at before, that 3D scanning stuff that looks at the bullets and everything and figures it out, it uses an Oracle database. So if you give me access to the database, I can tell you when the tests were actually done.
Wow.
Yeah. So the fact you can't fake the database, you can't reset the dates and all that kind of stuff. It's too hard.
Well,
so
Jane Doe brings up a good point, saying that it seems like they're going after Trump. Wasn't he involved in the golf thing? Yes, is the answer.
Yeah, very much so. And so again, I don't know what these guys are thinking, because their perception of reality is based on a different set of events that, to me, is not, to me, that's not what happened. So we're going to look at that tonight. And like you said, I think it's important, because we've got a bunch of new viewers that just kind of caught on to our work based on the coronavirus. It's important for people to understand that the Saudis and the Las Vegas shooting is like chapter 12. You don't get to the Saudis just by watching the footage of the shooting. It's like there's nobody flying around with a Saudi flag hanging out of anything. So it's not like it's obvious. You have to connect a whole bunch of evidence to get to that there's a group of people that might be the only people. And the other thing that's very important for us to talk about here is that we're not talking about the Saudis. That's not who we're talking about. We're talking about Saudi Arabians that have a dispute within their own government. So it's like,
the assassination family, right? Dispute within the royal family.
Within the
that is
royal,
the
that's
government.
right. It's within the royal family. So that's another important distinction here. So similar to like Anwar Sadat being assassinated and stuff like that,
By
this is a
Ayman
highly
al-Zawahiri, Egyptian Islamic
this is
Jihad.
this is a very politically charged topic within Saudi Arabia. But to say that it was the Saudis that carried this out oversimplifies it to a degree that makes it kind of, it's like you can't even say that because that's not really what happened. It wasn't the Saudis carrying out an attack on Americans for the sake of doing it to Americans. We were kind of the collateral damage, which sounds very flippant, but that's not how it's intended. So the Americans that got killed, that was not the intention, and the Canadians that got killed, that was, that's not why this all happened. The root cause of it appears to have been an assassination attempt on MBS. And so now when we start talking about subpoenaing the wealth fund from Saudi Arabia, and a lot of people have been questioning, why did MBS give Jared Kushner, or I'm using the wrong term. I shouldn't use the term give.
I spoke to Charles about this extensively.
You schooled me on this, right?
We can explain exactly what is going on.
What is this relationship, right?
So,
right. So what is the relationship between, well, in other words, between MBS and Jared Kushner? Something, $2 billion, right? So Charles has a far better understanding of this stuff than I do. So you'll help us understand that. But we're going to explore, why might MBS trust Jared Kushner with something, $2 billion more than, I don't know, Goldman Sachs or BlackRock or State Street or Vanguard or whatever it is that he's doing over there. If he's doing real estate investment trust, why him and not Vornado? Well, whatever the hell he's doing, whatever he's doing, is he the best in the freaking world? Is Jared Kushner number one, or
there's something
is there
wrong here?
Stay for right. Well, we're gonna look. I don't know if there's something wrong necessarily. In other words,
there's a red flag.
If I want to, all right, look, you and I have a relationship, right? We traveled across, Thailand together. We went out to the freaking where there was supposed to be a lake. We didn't see much water, but we went where they told us there was a lake.
Yeah.
We've done a lot of stuff together.
Meteors.
And if I had a video, if I was going to produce a documentary, I'd want you to do it with me because I trust you and I know you, right? And I'd say, hey, let's go to Thailand. We'll film the thing both in conventional and 3D. We'll go through the jungle and all that stuff.
We could distribute it on Apple Provision.
But I would go to you. I wouldn't go to frickin' James Cameron's, Deep Dive Productions or whatever the hell he calls it over there. I don't care about, that he's got this and he's got that. And I know you. I know I can sit and have a conversation with you about the production comfortably.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, that's that relationship I'm exploring tonight. Might MBS and Jared have a deeper relationship than many people realize? And if so, why might that be? How might that have developed? Was it because they went to karaoke together? Was it because they went to right? So that's what we're going to look at, is why might they have this really tight bond? Is it, if it wasn't karaoke, was it bumper cars? Did they spend an hour in the bumper cars together? We're going to figure out why they might have this affinity towards each other. We're going to explore it. We're going to explore it.
And what do you think about the name of the fund, Affinity Partners?
Oh, is it? Is that what it is? Affinity?
Yes.
Oh, that's cute.
And I think there's a reason for that.
I didn't know that.
So, just to quickly give you some insight into what I discussed with Charles. This is PitchBook. I'm sure a lot of people know about this website. I don't think I've ever looked at it before today, but Charles knows everything as far as what they're talking about. This PE buyout means something, etc. Number of professionals, number of investments. Charles said there were a number of things about this that he found, let's say, non-standard. I think people who are interested in looking at symbols will find the logo odd. And the thing that's really interesting, just to give people sort of a high level of what we spoke about with Charles, is that so here we see Jared and Nasad. Oh, wait a minute. I think I was logged in some different way on the other computer. Okay, so we can just talk about it. We can't see all this stuff. But what Charles was saying is that it's very unusual to have a fund where the total amount of money in it is $3 billion and $2 billion comes from one investor. There are some other investors that came in later for like 250 million. And Charles said that that's not the type of thing that an investor like the Saudi fund would want to see, because it basically lets these other small pittance investors sort of evaluate what they're doing for a year or whatever before they decide if they want to get involved. And it's just not the way these types of things are typically done. Additionally, Charles said that this is strange because Charles called this a stick fund. And I said, what the hell does that mean? And he said, typically, what you would do is you don't just come in with a private equity fund, which is what this is, PE, private equity buyout. So this is not a real estate investment fund. And we also looked at some of the investments. It was like an e-gym in Germany. And it was, what the hell is Saudi Arabia investing in that for? And why do they need Jared Kushner to do that? If they're doing some kind of horizontal city that nobody has ever seen before, that was the type of stuff that I would have expected them to get into. But there are a number of things about this that Charles and I agreed require some oversight and are very suspicious.
So there's something that, of course, Charles will probably breathes it and has the box of shorts called Morningstar. Right, so there's the Morningstar reports, and they rank PE buyout firms. So if you're a private equity firm, they rank their returns over the last 5 or 7 years or whatever, and you get to see, Vanguard, BlackRock, who are, or whoever these private equity funds are that are in some category. And so what I'm positing here is that I highly doubt that Affinity Partners, the PE buyout firm, is the number one PE buyout firm in the world. I doubt that.
No, definitely
so
not.
Therefore, right. So therefore, there's something else that in accounting, I think this is probably an accountant's nightmare, is this thing called goodwill, because they have to account for it. And in this case, the fact that Jared Kushner's Affinity Partners is not Goldman Sachs, it's not Morgan Stanley, it's not BlackRock, or who, again, I don't know who the PE buyout firms are. I'm just throwing names out of straw man. But the point is, Affinity Partners is probably not number one. So in order for MBS to do some major $2 billion something with Jared, there's got to be a lot of goodwill there, like what I described between you and me. In other words, I'm going to pick you even if you don't have $500,000 worth of red cameras. I'm still going to work with you, right? Even though, right, you got 50 grand worth of cameras, they got $500,000 worth of cameras. I'm still picking you.
Yeah.
Because of the goodwill.
Now, we've only got a minute left, John. And the one thing I just want to leave with everybody, so they don't think that I'm saying Jared Kushner did exactly what Hunter Biden has done. This is not a check for $2 billion being written to Jared Kushner or a company owned by Jared Kushner. This is a commitment to invest that amount in a particular type of thing that's laid out in contracts and all kinds of complicated stuff that Charles said we can't really know without doing a ton more research or possibly even becoming an investor. But it's also, he doesn't get $2 billion. It's not like wiring $5 million to a crackhead so he can buy $5 million worth of crack, Porsches, and hookers. This is an investment that they're in business together. And Kushner does have a track record as an investor and a business person. So, like, on the surface, this could be a legitimate business venture. Obviously, the ethics of that amount of business going to the son-in-law of a former president needs oversight and scrutiny. But it doesn't seem as nakedly criminal as what Hunter Biden has done, but there are still questions here. So with that, John, we've got just about a minute before we get over to subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen and patreon.com/IamJohnCullen. Take us out with one last thing here.
Well, we just also this past week celebrated the anniversary of the September 11th attacks. And so the irony here, the cold, scary irony, is it appears that the same people who received protection in the 28 pages, in other words, the 28 pages was redacted, heavily redacted, and the people whose names were redacted appear to be the same families, the same people.
Isn't that interesting?
Who were behind the funding and the planning of the Las Vegas shooting, including Jamal Khashoggi. So We're going to get into that with our patrons. We're going to talk about his connection to all this and the connection between the September 11th attacks and the Las Vegas shooting. It appears we've been covering up for these families now for 20 years.
And I've got a connection along those lines that will blow your mind, John, because I didn't know you were going to say that. And you may have noticed my thumbnail contains a small fleet of 727 aircraft. And I think you know my theory, about the role a 727 played on September 11th. So I hope people will stay with us because we've got a lot of stuff to discuss. Things that I've not heard anybody discuss anywhere else anytime before. You haven't heard it. I'm telling you, your mind will be blown. I've been looking up tail numbers of retired Trump shuttle aircraft. You don't want to miss this. Today is the day to become a sponsor. Join us on subscribestar.com/IamJohnCullen, patreon.com/IamJohnCullen, odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, Substack, Subscribestar, all those things. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Stay with us. Thanks to everybody that makes the show possible by sponsoring. See you in 5 minutes.